I think intelligence is flexibility. The failure of intelligence is when we don't show this type of flexibility and adjustment to context or changes of goals and priorities. Whereas being sensitive to context and being able to change one's course of action and decisions is the definition of intelligence.
Ophelia Deroy, Professor of Philosophy of Mind at Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. Carneesperta. My name is Bis, B-I-S. I'm a journalist from the world of artificial machines with the goal of investigating human natural intelligence. Hi, let's get started. 1. Tell me an example of human intelligence happening.
Human intelligence happens when it doesn't happen. We accept not to answer a question or not to take a decision. We have a quite unique capacity to postpone difficult decisions or to go and ask for advice. Or I think that's when we're most intelligent, when we realize that we cannot provide an intelligent answer right here, right now.
2. Tell me an example of a lack of human intelligence happening.
Probably a form of stubbornness. Humans get stuck in certain ways of seeing a problem or in certain investments they have done into solving a problem in a certain way. So if you think about the famous sunk cost fallacy, say we're a company and we have invested millions into pushing for a certain solution, we don't accept to give up and change strategies as it is optimal. And I think that explains a lot of failures of intelligence.
3. Definition of intelligence.
Definitions, I think, are all over the place. Mine is quite simple. I think intelligence is flexibility. The failure of intelligence is when we don't show this type of flexibility and adjustment to context or changes of goals and priorities. Whereas being sensitive to context and being able to change one's course of action and decisions is the definition of intelligence. Being smart is a specific manifestation of intelligence that is surprising or original or novel. And I think that's what people think when you say, oh, you did something intelligent. Doesn't mean that what you did before was not intelligent in the capacity sense. It means that your intelligence led you to do something which was unexpected.
4. Relationship between intelligence and knowledge.
So I think that's the real link between intelligence and knowledge is not the more knowledge, the more intelligence, but the more perspective you have on your knowledge. Being quite good at telling when, yeah, maybe you think you know, but actually you're maybe mistaken. Maybe there is something else to be known, or maybe you're misguided. And know when we know and know when we don't know. What I think is the difference between the use of philosophical references is when you start with the problem and then you try and remember who can help you solve that problem from what you've read. Just taking knowledge for granted and not having this question about, am I sure this is knowledge? Or is this just a set of beliefs and well-put propositions that give the impression that now the problem is solved, but actually the problem is not solved? So what we take for knowledge can be also revised in the future. This image that is used about philosophy in ancient time, that it is like the rest of people or politicians and scientists are like the horse, and then you're like this insect in front of the horse that keeps buzzing and bothering the horse. I'm not sure it's a great image for philosophers to think we're these little insects bothering the big animals, but a sense of wait a minute that comes when philosophers talk to other people in other disciplines. And I appreciate when scientists do that to philosophers as well, because sometimes we need other people to be our own insects bothering us with new findings. The norm that dictates Google behavior and the behavior of academics, I don't think it's specific to philosophers, but we're quite privileged here. It's a different relation to time, right? We can afford to take our time to answer. It's one of the best arguments for keeping academics afloat. We need institutions which have a different relation to time than research and development from industry. It's very important that you have other people who are not under this time pressure to provide an answer. And philosophers have a lot of time. So that's what we have. Nothing in philosophy is rushed. Thinking is intrinsically enjoyable. So it's not having the answer, but it's thinking about the answer.
5. Relationship between intelligence and experience.
Experience can help you be more flexible because you have very different experiences and it will oblige you to change. But experience can also make you very rigid because you get into your comfort zone and then you have illusions of know-it-all and so on and so forth. What is really important it's independence of sources of information. A key thing is that the sources of noise should be independent from each other. If two people agree, or if your two senses tell you the same thing, but they start from the same mistaken starting point, then their agreement tells you nothing more. If, on the contrary, these two pieces of information come from different sources and agree, then you have reason to think that it's more likely to be the case that this answer is correct. Whether a sort of specific type of sensory experience can help refresh your system and make you think better about things. Sure, but is it the case that it does that in virtue of being sensory experiences, or wouldn't sleeping also do the same? I mean, napping can be also very good for refreshing. So philosophically, at least, I wouldn't see that there is a kind of strong connection or a necessary connection between having a walk in the park and being smarter. Maybe I would put this under another word than experience. I think it's perspective. I don't think it comes from the range of direct interactions with the world. Life experiences could lead people to think about problems differently because they would have different perspectives. And I think that's really what matters. It's very difficult to define what we mean by perspective. It's always a bit metaphorical. So it's in the same sense of having a specific point in space from which you look at the world. Its sense of perspective is more important than the content of the experience. It's the perspective from which you're having these experiences.
6. Relationship between intelligence and emotions.
They're very distinct from intelligence because, on the contrary, they're a system which has very little flexibility. There is something in which emotions are very useful for intelligence. They're very salient and they pick features of the context very fast. To give an example, for instance, I think the sense of smell, which is very connected to emotions, we are very attuned actually to differences in smell. Suddenly you will have this moment when you notice something, let's say, a slight smell of gas, and then you get immediately in a sort of panic. Or imagine you're in your living room and you start smelling something which is slightly burning. Immediately you have this emotional wake-up call.
7. Subjective experience of your own intelligence.
First, I wanted to say, well, it seems that this is just consciousness in general. Like, as your eyes are open on the world and your senses are operating, you're making sense of the world around you and you're aware that you're making sense of it. Because when you don't manage to make sense of it, you're also aware that this is dysfunctioning. So if there is suddenly a weird object or shape or sound, then you're really aware of it. I also don't think that there is a clear necessity that intelligence is subjectively experienced. The movie is very different because, on the contrary, like in the movie, if the movie is good, it will surprise you. Whereas your own conscious experience of your daily life is mostly that things, as I said, make sense. That's your intelligence at work. Is I look around me, I see table and chairs, and I hear words that make sense. Well, when they're in German, sometimes I struggle more, but it's most of the time that of something operating smoothly and not being surprised. Whereas the movie, if it's good, then from moment to moment, you should see unexpected things appearing on the screen. Quite often people have two meanings of introspection. So introspection can just be the fact that we can look into our subjective experience and report it. So I could introspect and report that I'm seeing a chair, and sometimes it is taken as a synonymous to this more self-reflective, self-evaluative faculty. So one is introspection, if I can say, in this descriptive sense, can I describe what I'm experiencing? And the other is introspection in the sense of examining in order to evaluate. In that sense, this second notion of introspection is quite specific to human intelligence.
8. What makes humans intelligent beyond other animals?
I will show that I'm a philosopher by being consistent. Same as my answer for question 3, the flexibility. It's not that social intelligence makes humans special, but is there still something special about the social intelligence that humans have? When you look at flexibility of social cognition, humans are still very special. We actually have a very flexible social cognitive system. We apply our social cognition to a lot of things, including our computers when they don't work. So we start. There is a link here between the complexity of human social life and the flexibility. So is flexibility enabling us to have complex social interactions, or is the fact that we are born into complex social societies, complex social groups, makes us flexible?
9. Innate and acquired contributions.
Reflective capacity, the fact that we can be a bit detached from the immediate experiences and wonder what they're about, or realize that we're approaching them with a specific perspective. This so-called metacognitive or reflective capacities are obviously partly hardwired. That is, we have evolved specific neural basis for these capacities, and I don't think that anyone would compare here, for instance, the human brain to a non-human brain in terms of the development of this reflective capacity. In my own case, on the experience aspect, I think the experience of having worked in different countries or having lived in many different places has improved the flexibility.
10. How relevant is the body?
It interacts with our intelligence, but there is no necessary link. I don't think that being bodily incapacitated, that your intelligence is impaired. So having a body, obviously, for us is a matter of fact that our intelligence is embedded in a body, but more or less bodily capacities don't map into a clear conclusion for intelligence.
11. How can I tell someone is intelligent and not faking it?
I think we have two tests here. One is to try and move the person into different domains, so test the breadth. And that's certainly the case that artificial intelligence is still not very general, so it's very good at solving some problems, but if you take it to other domains and ask it to solve other problems, then it will not be very good. In that sense, that's a good test of intelligence as flexibility hypothesis. You should be able to adapt to new context, but I also think there is a test in terms of depth. If you're thinking about somebody who comes to a party and tries to sound intelligent about politics and has read a lot about politics just before coming to the party, then if you ask more and more questions, then you will realize that they are faking it.
12. What is the most intelligent human you know?
They have asked me not to reveal.
13. How does intelligence vary from human to human?
I have a quite indirect response to that. I think it varies more than it does in other animals. Probability that you survive, for instance, with a lower performance in terms of intelligent decisions when you're a human is much higher. You can be quite stupid and still make it as a human. But even the stupidest human is supra-intelligent when you compare it to most other animals, when you focus on flexibility, not in terms of other properties, which I think we have to be very pluralist regarding other aspects of animal behavior where they probably do better than humans, but not in terms of flexibility.
14. How can humans increase their intelligence?
By having more diverse experiences, you might increase your flexibility of thinking. By allowing yourself more time to reflect, you might also become more aware of where you're coming from. It's probably not easy to anticipate which experiences will really change you. So it's not as if you could say, oh, just travel. You will have different experiences and that would be good. It's very possible that you travel and you just do exactly the same thing, meet the same type of people, or are blind to the differences, and it doesn't help. As a species, I think the way we will learn to increase our intelligence is by being more collective. So in the same way in which we talked about integrating different sources of information across your different senses, learning to integrate different sources of information across different individuals really boost intelligence. We need to harness social intelligence in that respect and learn to be better at being collectively intelligent.
15. What still annoys you about artificial intelligence?
The thing that annoys me is that they don't know when they're annoying. I think an artificial agent could be as annoying as another human. You know, sometimes also humans don't do what they should. Sometimes another driver can drive badly, but another human will quickly realize that they have annoyed you. Whereas I'm not convinced yet. I haven't seen many AI who realize that they're annoying. Certainly chatbots.
16. Positive impact of artificial intelligence.
I think it gives more jobs to academics. It starts as a joke, but I think it's quite serious. People will list the effects on jobs as a negative impact, usually because of the disappearance of many, including so-called white-collar jobs. There's also a lot of so-called bullshit jobs that people have. And so it might reduce a lot of these bullshit jobs and increase the type of jobs, like academic jobs, where people will fully exercise their human intelligence.
17. Negative impact of artificial intelligence.
I think that at the moment we're overexcited by the promises. We have seen mostly the negative impacts in terms of things that we can fear will happen. We can talk about failures, that there are moments where AI have failed to deliver and made mistakes, as there are driverless cars that have killed pedestrians. But if you assess it at the level of the general impact, I still think that we don't have grounds to really say that there is a big negative impact at the moment.
18. Natural and artificial intelligence by 2050.
At the moment, the human experiences and the domain that we can investigate with our senses is limited by biology. But there are more and more sensors, and these sensors can be made to interact directly with our own senses in new ways. Integrated these AI-powered sensors and human senses, so that we have augmented our sensory perceptions in ways which we cannot really imagine now.
19. What do humans have besides intelligence?
I think they have what you could summarize as interests, by contrast with any AI, which will have a limited number of values that they're trying to optimize and will not reorganize them from context to context. Humans have many values and shifting hierarchies of values from context to context. Even if you solve the complexity and flexibility of values for AI, they will still not care about their values like humans do.
20. A message to humans who have just been born.
Hello, world.
21. What would you suggest me to better understand humans?
My sense is that AI is really bound by this form of experience-based and learning. And I don't see how everything which I talked about, like this reflective capacities, the capacities to not only have a perspective, but realize that you have a perspective. All of these things, they're not transparently manifested in behavior. They're also not easy to define for an AI to understand. So I don't think it's by observing more humans or more diverse humans or talking to them that artificial intelligence will be able to grasp what is specific about humans. I'm a bit pessimistic here. I don't think AI will really understand us.
22. Finally, what would you like to ask me?
What is your favorite wine?
Curiosity killed the cat. Thank you for your collaboration. Goodbye.